and welcome back. Today we're going to talk about maps and land navigation and methods of navigating on the ground from a map. So to begin with, a map is a geographical representation of the Earth. Okay, so the maps use, or the cartographers who create the maps use symbols, colors to annotate features that are actually physically on the ground and represent them on a map. There's a lot of things that you can do with the map. Some of the other videos that we talk about, we may talk about some of the intelligence information that you can obtain from it, but that's a little more intense and a little more involved. So that'll probably be like after you've had some type of a mapping class. Now, a friend of mine, Eve Gonzalez, we're talking about doing a class here, I think, coming up soon on Zoom. So if you're interested in getting a map reading land navigation class, the actual class, shoot me an email at guy@greatlivingsources.com, or comment in the comments below, or go to the website greatlivingsources.com and leave us a comment there. We will get you added to the list to ensure that you know when that's coming up. So a lot of folks probably don't think about or don't understand the importance of being able to read a map and then to be able to navigate using a map. Okay. There's a lot of different information that is on a map that can help you, especially if you're navigating or if you're doing planning a bug out location or something to that effect. So some of the things that are on the map, and there are different types of maps. Okay, almost everybody has probably seen some type of a road map. You can usually, or you used to be able to get them for free at gas stations. Now they're probably about $10. There's an atlas, which there's a road atlas, which basically is all the roads in a particular country. There are special maps. There are maps that you get at the park to go on hiking trails, all different kinds. So the ones that I'm really going to talk about, because in order to do land navigation using a map, you also have to have what is called a declination diagram. Now, a declination diagram, so first off, there are three different norths. There's a grid north, which is the vertical and horizontal lines that are on the map. Those are called grid lines. A map almost always is north. So if you're looking at the map correctly, so that everything is readable to you, then north is typically to the top of the map. Okay, so that's the grid north. That's that vertical line that goes from the top of the map to the bottom of the map. There's a true north, which is and has always been fixed on the North Star, which is one of the stars of the Polaris constellation. Now, one of the things that's interesting is lately I've heard that the North Star is about 3 to 5 degrees off of where it's usually been. Now, the reason that true north is because that has always been a true north location. So the fact that it's deviated from its present location is something maybe needs to be looked into and see what's going on up there. The other north is the magnetic north. Now, that's the one that we've been talking about. That's the geomagnetic poles. Okay, so there's a true north, or a geomagnetic north, and a geomagnetic south, and that's the poles that people are talking about that are moving. And there's a few different people out there. I just seen another map that shows that the North Pole is going to be, hold on, I gotta look, I forget now. The North Pole is going to be west of the central part of South America. I had to check and make sure I thought that was right, but I wasn't sure. So the South Pole is supposed to be somewhere about middle part of India towards the central part of that state or country. Now, I've also seen the South Pole just off the southern coast of India. So somewhere that's where they're supposed to be, and that's significant in your ability to navigate, because when you're holding the compass is supposed to always point towards that magnetic north, which, as we've just stated, is in the process of moving. There's a lot of YouTubes out there that they go into a lot of detail in regards to into what's going on with that. So I'm not going to cover that in this video. I am going to tell you that it is moving. So that's going to have an impact on your ability to convert the direction that you're going to go from the map to the compass that's in your hand. And that can be pretty significant. Now, when I was in the Army and later when I was doing geospatial stuff, a lot of the products that I did were not for land navigation, because they did not have this declination diagram that's on there. Okay, so because without that, you cannot convert that grid north to the magnetic compass. And because of the changes so much, even the products, even maps that you have, one of the things that you need to understand about a map, by the time the map is actually in a paper form and you've got it in hand, the information on there has probably already changed. So it's already outdated before it's even published. That's going to be potentially true, especially with the declination diagrams. Okay. Now there is a website. I will try and see if I can find it and post it when I post this video. I'll make a note so I don't forget. But there was a website that used to show what the declination was in your area. Okay, so if you have to navigate and the map that you have does not have this declination diagram, if you go to this website, then you should be able to do so. Now, here's the problem. Map reading and land navigation have almost become a lost art. Everybody has Google Maps or something, Bing Maps, whatever, on their phone, and almost everybody uses it, or almost every vehicle has a navigation system in it now, where you type in the address and it takes you to that location, sort of. So actually navigating with a paper map is almost a lost art. And in the event that something happens, especially in the case of like with this geomagnetic pole shift or the grid down, or anything that's going to impact our constellations, the satellites that we have out there, your GPS is not going to work. Okay, if the cell phone towers are out, then even your Google stuff isn't going to work. So you really need to be able to learn how to read a map and then understand what that map is actually telling you. It's you can kind of think of a map reading as you've learned a new language, or you're trying to read a book that's in a language that you aren't really familiar with. And you're trying to decipher what those words are. Well, it's the same thing. So, but once you know the code, then that that map's going to give you a lot of information. Okay, so we have different colors that are represented on the map. On the colors, so there's red, which basically is your roads. The highways, interstates are typically red. Trails are usually a dashed line. All weather hard surface blacktop roads that are on there that are not interstates or not highways are typically going to be a solid black line. Then the black objects, other than those roads, are cultural features or man-made features. So like symbols for churches, which is usually a square with a cross above it. Schools, which is typically a square with a like a pennant. It's a flag, something like what you see on a golf course. Some of the like culture features would be like, say, like Stonehenge or some historical monument location. Those are all going to be black symbols. Okay. Now, again, these are typically on what we call topographic maps. USGS is probably the best source that you can get to purchase or to acquire these topographic maps. Brown is going to be like your brown is going to be like your contour lines. Contour lines are lines that show the elevation so that you can get that 3D perspective of the terrain. The closer these contour lines are together, the steeper the hill. So if you've got like contour lines that are almost basically right on top of each other, you're looking at a cliff, okay, or some type of very steep terrain. Blue is always water, or almost always water. I can't think of any situation where it's not. Green is vegetation. It's going to show you the different types of vegetation. A lot of times there'll be different colors of green. Darker green is typically your forest types. The lighter greens are typically like grasslands, fields, pastures, that kind of stuff. Orchards are usually shown as green circles that are in a row or in a rectangle or whatever, some kind of a shape that kind of look like dice, where they're uniformly spaced. White is typically shown where there's like no vegetation of any kind. There's like no grass or whatever. So those are going to be like quarries, pasture or open fields that don't have grass on them because it's, the soil doesn't. Deserts will be typically white. And then there's a purple color, and purple is usually that a revision. So remember I told you at the beginning of the video, a map is almost outdated as soon as it's printed. Sometimes if a change has been done, or if the terrain hasn't changed that much, what they will do instead of reprinting the whole map is they will make the changes in purple on top of the map. Now, typically maps, at least for the military, are updated every 3 to 5 years. Okay, they are rotated. They show up. We do an update for the map, and that's when a lot of times you'll see these purples. Now, we used to do runs with purple on some maps. If we were in an area doing an operation and something changed, or we found something that was drastically wrong with the map, we, instead of trying to reprint the whole map, we can run the revision on the current maps much faster than trying to reprint the whole map, because it takes a while to print these things. So those are some of the things that the colors and stuff represent. Now, getting back to the land navigation, in order to navigate, you first find where you are on that map, okay? And you can do that several ways. One of the ways is to find two locations that you can identify on the map, and then figure out where you are in relationship to that, to your current location actually on the face of the earth. Okay, so once you've identified your location, then you identify the location in which you want to go to. Okay, once you have that, then you draw a line between the point that you are to the point that you want to go, and then using a protractor, which looks something like this. Okay, this is also how you read coordinates on a topographic map. So these little triangles that you see here represent different scales of maps. Okay, so this one is 1 to 50. I have to put on my glasses, sorry. This one is 1 to 25, and this is a 1 to 100,000 scale map. Now, typical topographic map is either going to be a 1 to 50,000 or it's going to be a 1 to 100,000. A USGS map is usually 1 to 24,000. So you probably can't use this. You'll have to actually get a protractor that has these triangles on it that is set to 1 to 24. And I'm not sure if I have one here, but each of these triangles are broken down into 10 increments. Okay, so basically 1,000 meters. Everything in this is a meter. So you determine what the distance is, or what the angle of it is, and that's where this X, and I don't know if you can see that, but there's an X in the middle of this protractor. So you put the center point of where you are here, and then where that line crosses, that is the degree in which you have to set your compass. So then you point your compass in that direction, and that's the direction you need to go in order to make it to the location. Now, one other thing I want to show you, and I apologize, I probably should have had these out before I started talking, but so this guy here, this guy is it tells you the distance. So basically what you do is you set this on the location that you are, and then you run it across the line, and you can measure the distance between 2 points. You can also use this to more accurately measure a road, because as you know, roads are crooked, they're not straight for the most part. So with this, you can curve and turn you can twist and turn the tool in order to get the distance, and then you just back it up along the scale bar at the bottom of your map to determine what the distance is, if the distance isn't actually on here. Now, this has a lot of different scales, so you can use it for a lot of different areas and stuff. So that's kind of the down and dirty. And now there's a lot more that goes into that. I don't have time to get into this video. That those classes, the map reading class by itself is over an hour. So that's compressing a lot of information in a short period of time. Usually I would like to do that in about 2 hours, the one class that I have now. The other thing I want to talk about, there is another form of navigation. It's called orienteering. Now, orienteering, as it sits right now, is basically a competitive event in which you use land navigation and you race. Okay, and what you do is you have a start point, and then you have so many points between the finish that you have to hit, and then the one that gets it done the fastest is the one that wins. Now, orienteering could be used for land navigation in this instance, and again, you still would want that declination diagram, but you might be able to get away without using the declination diagram if you know what you're doing. That's where you really get into some advanced understanding of the terrain and the ground and stuff. So, but essentially what they do is the points are placed on identifiable terrain features. Okay, so typically you have a hilltop, which if you hold your fist up, the knuckles are the hilltops. The area between the knuckles is what is called a saddle. The finger itself is called a spur, and the area between the two fingers is called a draw. Okay, then if you turn your fist around, and if I can get this to look, so that hole that your fist makes is what is called a depression. And then if you put your two fists together, the area between, right here, between where the knuckles join, is called a valley. Okay, and the series of knuckles on your fist is called a ridge. Okay, so those are the major terrain features that are present on a map, and that's the easiest way to remember them. So these points are placed on like hilltops or features that are on the map. So like, for example, there may be a school in the area. That school may have a point. To navigate using a orienteering to get from, say, your home to a bug out location, what you can do is do the same thing. You place waypoints, if you will, along the route from your home to the bug out location, and then those are the places that you're looking to go towards. Now, one of the other things that you can do with that is establish caches. Okay, now the danger or the risk that you take in establishing caches, especially if it's not on your land, is that somebody else may find it. Okay, and the fact that you're trespassing in order to do it, unless it's like in a national park or a state park. But even in those locations, even though it may not be considered trespassing, those items could still be found. Okay, there's ways that you can get around that potentially, but that's not what this class is about, or this video is about. So, so the thing about a map is it has a lot of information. It's going to be critical because in the instance that a stuff has hit the fan scenario, or a end of the world as we know it scenario has occurred, you may or may not be able to have a GPS, okay? And even if you do, it may not be correct, because they may scramble them, they may induce an error that only they know about, so that, you know, it may not actually point you in the right direction. So being dependent and relying totally on a GPS device is not a wise decision. You need to understand how to navigate using a lot of different methods, you know, finding true north based on where the stars are. Being able to find where north and south is based on the shadow method. There are a lot of different ways of doing things. You can actually make You can make a magnetic compass using the water in a stick and leaves and stuff. So, but those are some techniques that are advanced techniques. Um, we do have classes that we talk about these things, but if you do not know land navigation, if you do not know how to read a map, and I mean properly read a map, and my guess is that there's a lot of folks out there that don't. Um, as I've said before, I was a geospatial warrant officer. This is what I've done since forever. I've been doing it almost 40 years now. And when I was in the Army, I would get soldiers in my section that could not read a map. Now, when I went to basic and AIT, basic land navigation was a mandatory skill. You had to pass it in order to graduate from the school, from the basic training before you even started doing what it was that the Army brought you in to do. So, but I found out later that that was not a mandatory skill. And I think the biggest reason was because most of them had said, well, we've got GPSs, we've got pluggers and sluggers and all these other GPS devices, so we don't need it anymore. So a lot of people don't know how to read a map. Okay, bottom line. And that in a crisis situation can be a skill that if you do not have, may be the difference between life and death. And I try not to get too what's the word I'm looking for? Too negative, too down. Down. I can't think of the words I'm looking for right now, but I don't try to be too negative. I don't try to get into that particular area. I try to stay away from that. But in all honesty, especially if you have to get from point A to point B, if you do not know how to navigate, you may not make it. Okay, there's just so many things that can happen. Understanding how the terrain is and understanding what the terrain itself is critical, especially if you're trying to set up a security perimeter. Okay, if you're trying to protect your home, protect your property, protect your bug out location, whatever it is, understanding how that terrain is laid out and understanding how the terrain can help you or how the terrain can hurt you is going to be critical in establishing that security perimeter that you need in order to stay safe. Okay, so if you don't know how to read a map, if you don't know how to navigate using a map and a compass or even orienteering, I strongly recommend that you do that. And like I said, if you're interested, I'm going to be doing some classes where we get into a lot of the detail. We actually explain and teach how to do a lot of these different things. There's just so much to explain that this 30 to 40 minute video is just not going to be long enough in order to do that. So, but I recommend that you do. If you like I said, if you want a class, let me know. If you can't make the one that we're going to establish, then we'll try to set up something else so that you can get that class and get you those skills that you need in order to survive no matter what happens. I think a lot of us realize or we feel that something is coming. What exactly it is, how bad it's going to be, I have no idea. I just don't think it's going to be a good thing, whatever it is. So understanding, learning the skills, on my soapbox again, have a plan, learn the skills, establish the resources you need, are all going to be things that you need to do in order to ensure that you are safe and those that you care about and love are safe. Okay, so I appreciate you stopping by. Hopefully you've learned something from this. Hopefully you will get the skills that you need. You'll learn to, go get these classes. If you have questions, if there's something I can do to help, um, contact me. Again, my email address is guy@greatlivingsources.com. My website is greatlivingsources.com. The information will be in the comment section below. There's also a link for a readiness checklist that you can sign up for the newsletter that we post once a week. If you're a business, or if you have a business owner, or if you know of a business owner, there is a report, a free report. It's called Disaster Impacts on Businesses. Talks about some of the different things that, how a disaster can impact your business, and then how to be ready for that as a business owner, how to recover after a disaster has hit your area. So there's a lot of things that you can, we can do to help you. Just let us know if there are topics that you would like to hear more about. Put them in the comments, send us an email, let us know. You can find us on Facebook. GL Sky is my pin name, which is where I've written some of my books under. And Great Living Sources is the website or the Facebook page that is actually tied to all of our readiness stuff. As I've said before, I do have a book that's coming out. It's the Self-Reliant Survival book. It's a holistic approach to being ready. In it, we talk about some of the basic skills and things that you need to know. We don't only talk about it, we tell you how to do these different things. So let us know. Whatever you do, be ready. And again, remember the core calm. Thanks for stopping by.